Today's reading from the Gospels, Mark 5, 1 through 20, where the healing of the demon-possessed man by Jesus. They came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes. And when he had stepped out of the boat, immediately a man out of the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. He lived among the tombs, and no one could restrain him anymore, even with a chain. For he had often been restrained with shackles and chains, but the chains he wrenched apart, and the shackles he broke in pieces, and no one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always howling and bruising himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and bowed down before him and shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he had said to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." He begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now there on the hillside, a great herd of swine was feeding, and the unclean spirits begged him, "Send us into the swine, let us enter them." So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the swine, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and were drowned in the sea. The swineherds ran off and told it in the city and in the country. Then people came to see what it was that had happened. They came to Jesus and saw the demoniac sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, the very man who had had the legion, and they were afraid. Those who had seen what had happened to the demoniac and to the swine reported it. Then they began to beg Jesus to leave their neighborhood. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed by demons begged him that he might be with him. But Jesus refused and said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and what mercy he has shown you." And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everybody was amazed. May the Lord bless these words and any that have heard them.
Sing along if you know the words.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you, so let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please won't you be my neighbor?
it certainly is a beautiful day in this neighborhood. And Jesus wanted it to be a beautiful day in their neighborhood too. It's just that nobody seemed to be in much of a neighborly mood that day. As Jesus enters the city of Jericho in what is now northern Jordan, after crossing the Sea of Galilee with his closest followers, his disciples, disciple, which comes from a Greek word that means follow. After crossing the Sea of Galilee with his disciples and entering the city of Jericho, Jesus is met by a man. A man who, as the writer of Mark's Gospel puts it, is out of the tombs with an unclean spirit. The tombs, a collection of burial caves carved into the side of hills. Unclean spirit. In that time and place, the idea was that unclean spirits, evil spirits, demons, were the cause of a whole host of human suffering. Certainly the suffering caused by inappropriate intentional acts, but also the suffering caused by a number of things that people did not bring upon themselves, like physical disabilities. Or, as is most likely the case with this man, some type of mental illness or emotional trauma. And it was significant. Significant enough to regularly cause outbursts of physical aggression and even self-harm. Significant enough to make the man an outcast, not welcome in the neighborhood. And when Jesus shows up, the unclean spirit is not in a particularly neighborly mood. Spirit immediately says to Jesus, after Jesus tries to drive the spirit out of the man, after Jesus tries to heal the man, the spirit responds, "Hey, Son of God, get out of my neighborhood." Because you know how our demons are, right? They don't like to go away. They don't go away very easily. They resist. Especially when they've become ingrained, when they've reached the point where they have made someone an outcast. Reached the point where they have made someone unwelcome in their own neighborhood. And especially when they have reached the point, as is the case with this man, where there is more than one demon at work at the same time. When Jesus asks the unclean spirit, the demon, "What is your name?" the unclean spirit says, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Legion, in Jesus' time, a term that would have brought to mind for the audience of Mark's Gospel a battalion of Roman soldiers, which would have numbered many, about 6,000. A term that maybe for us in our time might bring to mind the soldier who has come home from battle with PTSD, but can't get the treatment that they need. And so they try to self-medicate. When they try to self-medicate, they develop a substance abuse problem. And because of the substance abuse problem, they can't keep a job. So they end up homeless and on the streets, living in the tombs of our society. unwelcome in the neighborhood. And as we know, the demons will do anything to survive. But Jesus knows that it's not enough. It's not enough to just heal the person. What's also necessary is to eliminate, to get rid of the conditions and the systems that give rise to the demons. The emotional and the social and the relationship and the political, whatever the conditions and the systems are that give rise and help maintain the demons, they've got to go too. Which brings us to the pigs over the cliff. That bizarre scene in this story from Mark's Gospel. And before we call PETA on Jesus, this is not in any way meant to represent an intentional and cruel act against innocent animals. See, Mark's Gospel is written for what scholars refer to as a Jewish Christian audience. Jesus' closest followers, the earliest ones, were Jews in and around Jerusalem, who still, for a couple of generations, believed that they were still very faithful Jews, but who had found in Jesus the long-awaited, long-expected Messiah. And so for that audience, they recognize the pigs are considered to be an unclean entity. They are ritually unclean. They are not fit for eating, not fit for ritual sacrifice. And so what the scene represents for us is Jesus taking not just the unclean spirit in the man, but taking the entire unclean scenario and sending it all over the cliff. The way that we must do if we are to help all of those who suffer from whatever their demons are: mental illness, emotional trauma, addiction, PTSD, you name it. Thing is, the Gerasenes ain't Jewish. They're Gentiles. They're pagan. So they're not particularly happy about seeing all those pigs go over the cliff and drown in the sea. It's a bit of a disruption. So now they are not in a particularly neighborly mood toward Jesus either. They beg him to leave. They beg him to leave because, as Mark tells us, they are afraid. Well, yeah. Be afraid too if I just saw my pigs go over the cliff. But see, that's not the issue. That's not what they're afraid of. The writer of Mark's Gospel tells us that it is not the pigs going over the cliff that has made the Gerasenes afraid. What has made them afraid is the man. They become afraid when they see the man who had had all those demons tormenting him clothed and in his right mind, the writer puts it. That's what they're afraid of. When they see the guy clothed and in his right mind, clothed, a term which in the Bible frequently represents healing. Why? Why would they be afraid at seeing this man healed? Because now they have to figure out what to do with it. About 70 years ago, Murray Bowen, a psychiatrist, began to develop what would become known as family systems theory. Bowen's understanding was that it wasn't enough to just treat the person who had some type of mental illness or emotional trauma or some issue of that nature. That it wasn't enough to just treat the person. That you must also treat the entire family. Bowen understood families as emotional units, as social emotional systems. And so his sense was that just like any system, something that happened to one person in the family, one part of the system, would by necessity impact everybody else in the family, impact the rest of the system. And as Bowen knew, and as we know, systems are resistant to change. And in the case of the person with a mental illness or an emotional trauma, it can be even more so. Bowen had a term for that person, the IP, the identified patient. Because Bowen's feeling was, again, that while they were the person who had the symptoms, the entire system was in play. And in a strangely perverse but understandable way, very often the identified patient would serve as a stabilizing force within the family system. In a weird but unhealthy way, according to Bowen. That the person with the disorder, the mental illness, the PTSD, whatever it is, would serve a function within the family where perhaps they would help make other members of the family feel better about themselves because they didn't have it. Or they would make certain members of the family assume the role of caretaker. And there would be stability within the system because of that. Or the other members of the family would simply band together and become closer, but make the identified patient an outcast. Bowen's understanding was it made sense, but it wasn't good for anybody. And so you could not just heal the person. You had to address the entire family, the entire system. Healing was not healing without the reintegration of the identified patient into the entire family system. Reintegration as a fully whole and equal member. Bowen's ideas since then have been used to understand and to analyze other social systems, workplaces, teams, organizations, neighborhoods. And so when the man formerly known as Legion goes to Jesus after being healed and begs to go with Jesus, Jesus says no. And it may seem cruel. It may seem cold, but it is exactly the opposite. Jesus says, go home to your friends, because that is what needs to happen for his sake and theirs. Healing is not healing without reintegration. Jesus knows it is necessary for the man to go back to his neighborhood and for his neighborhood to learn how to do the work of reintegrating him into the community. friends, there are legions of people. Legions of people in our neighborhood, our society, howling in the tombs, treated as outcasts because of their mental illness, or their emotional trauma, or their PTSD, or their substance abuse issues. Legions of them. Veterans, who we are more than happy to send off to serve us, but when they come home still do not have the resources they need to be adequately and appropriately reintegrated into the neighborhood, given little more at times than just the thank you for your service. Mentally ill, the mentally ill who still do not have the adequate resources that they need to be treated and reintegrated into our neighborhoods. Those who have been in prison, who we still do not provide adequate resources and support to so that they can be reintegrated into the neighborhood once we have done what we have required of them. That they serve their time, they pay their debt to our society. Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe it's the person who we have made an outcast because they have a different religion, or a color, or a sexual orientation. Maybe it's the bully, or the bully. Maybe it's a family member. Whoever it is. We may not be able to heal them. We may not have that gift. We may not have those skills. But we can all help do the work of reintegration. Because there is no healing, no wholeness, no clothed and in their right mind without reintegration. That is what makes for a beautiful day in the neighborhood. It's what makes for a beautiful